Hey, this story is just one part of the Stories with Sapphire podcast. If you want to hear the full episode in its intended context, the link is in the description below. It's story time. Chapter 1. My Cursed Bloodline.
It was the summer. I went home to
Wait,
Arizona.
sorry. I'm so sorry. Is there a window behind you? To your side or the other side? Is that a window?
Yes.
Is it open?
No.
So there's
Can you
no
hear
wind.
something? No, there's no wind. Why? What just happened?
When Cassidy Liston told me that weird things tend to happen around her, she was not kidding. We'll go over what happened during our call later. Like many people I've spoken with, paranormal experiences run in her family.
I found out when I was like 16 that my father had also had a lot of paranormal experiences growing up. And that kind of opened the floodgates. And I found out that a lot of people in my family actually had.
And something else ran in her family as well.
And then when I was in my 20s, I found out that I'm a descendant of one of the original accusers from the Salem witch trials. And so we kind of have this running family joke that our bloodline is cursed. And that's why weird things always happen to us. And we always seem to end up living in haunted locations.
Some of Cassidy's earliest paranormal memories were from her grandparents' house.
My grandparents lived in this old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, only surrounded by cornfields and the woods, dirt road leading up to the house, totally secluded, and we loved spending time there when we were kids, obviously. One of our favorite things to do when we were growing up, when we would go to my grandparents' house, is it was surrounded by miles of cornfields. So we would play hide and go seek in the cornfields. And I have mostly older siblings and older cousins, and I only have one younger brother who was alive then. And we were always way too afraid to go deep into the cornfields, so we would always hide right along like the edge so that we would still be a little bit in the light from the house. Because of course you were playing at night. And one night we were playing hide and go seek, and sometimes they would try to be nice to us, the older cousins, and pretend like they didn't see us right in the very front of the cornfield. And so they would walk past and go deeper in. And I was sitting in the dirt, kind of shivering, holding my knees to my chest, and I could hear something talking behind me. And while I hadn't seen anyone walk past me, I just was like, oh, it must just be one of my brothers back there, and they're whispering to each other. But the voice kept getting louder and louder, and it felt like it was right behind me. And it was a very distinctly female voice, which I am the only girl in my family, so there were no other little girls playing with us. And it definitely was an adult woman, and she was whispering really, really close to like the back of my head, but I was too afraid to turn around and look and see it. It was hard to hear what she was saying because it was really low, and it was really like frantic. And so it just was like this urgent, like kind of raspy whispering that to me felt like someone was trying to either warn me about something or trying to get me to come towards them. I didn't know what was the safest thing to do because part of it felt like she was trying to tell me to come more into the corn to get away from whatever was about to happen out there. But then the normal part of my brain was like, no, run away from the disembodied voice, Cassidy. What are you trying? What? No, don't go towards the voice. Finally, I bolted out of the cornfield and just ran into the house. And later that night, I was talking to my little brother, and he was like, why were you whispering in the cornfield to me? You went in so deep. You don't usually go that deep into the cornfield. Because I was behind, he thought it was me behind him whispering at him. And he was like, we both usually stay right on the edge of the cornfield. Why were you back there so deep? And he was really young at the time. He was probably only like 3. So the fact that he thought it was me is just so creepy. I always had this image in my head that if I turned around and looked to see who it was, and I don't know why I thought this, that it would be like an old woman with really long hair who was like crouched down, you know, like on her haunches, leaning into like the back of my ear talking to me. I don't know what they wanted, I think is what was like the most sinister. Like there was no real plan that they had in place. You know, they weren't telling me directly to do something or to go somewhere. It was just like a frantic need for me to move and be out of that specific area. So maybe I just had like an overactive imagination, and the idea of like a scary old lady is what popped into my head. Or maybe that's what I would have seen if I would have turned around, had the courage to do it. Thankfully, I did not.
Cassidy and her cousins would also randomly hear banging coming from upstairs, as if someone was angrily stomping around. They all also felt the same heaviness in one corner of the basement, where she once awoke in the middle of the night to find herself standing there. There was a general sense of unease in this place, like they were constantly being watched. Cassidy thought this was typical of everyone's childhood.
I think it's one of those things where I didn't even realize how strange it was until I was older and started, like, I would tell people things like that, and they'd be like, yeah, no, that's not a universal experience. Like, nobody else had that when they were a kid. But everyone in my family had kind of these experiences, and we talked about, like, ghosts and stuff so often. I just thought it was run of the mill. And then when I moved to college, and this is the first time, obviously, I lived out of my family's home, and my roommate was constantly complaining that I brought a ghost with me because we were constantly having things happening in our dorm room. It didn't help that we lived in an old hotel that they had turned into living units. So this place had quite the history. Like, it's this old school hotel in Brooklyn Heights, New York. And the 7th floor, which of course is the floor that we lived on, had actually burnt down once. And obviously not everyone had made it out. And we would see and hear things constantly. And all of my friends complained that they never felt like they were haunted or believed in ghosts until they spent too much time around me and witnessed it themselves. One of the most common things that would happen is we had this light right on the entranceway of our room, or whatever you want to call it, dorm area. And me and my roommate, we would just kind of leave our door open, and our room was the room that everyone would come hang out in because we lived on the same floor as all of our friends. And that light would never work. We got the bulb replaced like 10 times. We were constantly flicking it on and off and trying to futz with it, and it just never worked. And the only time that light would ever turn on is when my good friend Amanda would walk into the room. It would turn on immediately. Every single time, without fail. She didn't come in the room for 2 weeks. It never turned on. She was in the room 3 times that day. It would turn on 3 times each time she walked in. And so we always joked that the ghost had a crush on her. We also very often would hear knocking on all of our walls at all hours of the night. And you might think that's not that strange for like a dorm situation, but the dorm that was actually right next to us was empty. So there was no possible way that somebody was in there knocking on the walls at 4 a.m., loudly, like banging. And that probably happened at least once a week. The first week that we were staying in that room, my roommate, who I had been randomly assigned to, so I'd never met this girl before in my life, about the 3rd or 4th night that we stayed there, the next morning I wake up and she's kind of looking at me weird. And I was like, hey, is everything okay? And she's like, this is really weird, and I know we're about to live together for the next year, so I hope this doesn't put us off on like a wrong foot. But last night, there was this woman in white standing over the bed, just staring at you. And it scared me so bad, like I couldn't move. And then you were just sleeping. You just slept right through it, and she was just standing right in front of you, staring at you, which scared the crap out of me. And also I was like, well, this should be interesting if she can see stuff like that. We end up asking around, are there any like legends or haunts about this building? And apparently there was a woman who was supposed to get married, and her husband died the night before their wedding. So she jumped off of the building in her wedding dress and landed on like a terrace down below. And people claimed to see her walking the halls. And my roommate described what she saw to one of the people who'd been there for like 4 years. And he was like, yeah, oh yeah, that's her. You'll see her a lot, probably. When I went to college, I think that's when I kind of realized that it might have more to do with me than just the circumstances that I'm in when it came to the paranormal. Just because, like I said, growing up with my family, it felt like somebody had a new ghost story or something weird that happened every night. And so it just felt like, oh, that's just something that happens. And even my other friends who lived in the building, they experienced the most activity whenever they were in our room with me. Amanda, who was my friend who the ghost had a crush on, she actually moved out to California with me. And we lived together for 3 years. And she was like, I'd never experienced so much paranormal activity in my entire life living with you. She's like, the moment I moved in with my boyfriend and my future husband, nothing. It all stopped. I never experienced anything again. And meanwhile, every place I've lived, I've been like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. Like, my couch is haunted right now. And I actually convinced her once. This was probably one of the scariest things that ever happened to me. She came and visited me after school finished. It was the summer. I went home to Arizona.
Wait, sorry. I'm so sorry. Is there a window to you behind you?
Right after Cassidy was about to share what she considers her most terrifying experience, I noticed something move in the background of her video.
I just saw like a curtain flutter.
Yeah, there's no wind. It's closed.
She moved her camera to show me the window, and I noticed her cat tower. I figured it was her cat who moved the curtain.
It's closed.
Stop. Wait, do you have a cat?
I do, but he's locked in the other rooms because he meows at me when I record.
Oh my God. Okay, sorry. I had to point that out before we continued.
That sounds about right.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, so I believe you.
I posted the clip on TikTok, and people were very divided on it. The link is in the show notes if you want to check it out for yourself. But if it wasn't the wind and it wasn't a cat that moved the curtain, then something moved it right before Cassidy was about to launch into the wildest part of her story, which will continue after a brief break. And now, Cassidy shares the most horrifying paranormal experience of her life.
I finished school and I went and stayed at my dad's house for the summer, who lived in Arizona. Amanda, my friend, came with me. So my dad actually left on a business trip one morning, and so we had the whole house to ourselves, and we're like so excited. And I don't know where I got this bright idea, but I did. And I decided that we should try astral projecting. So we did research all morning on the best way to do it and how you should be laying down and what you should picture. And there's several different ways to try and astral project. But one of the most successful ones that I saw was you pretend that there is a rope from your chest straight up into the astral plane. And then you picture it is made out of something that you can easily imagine. So whether that's an actual rope from gym class, or I don't know why, but my brain went straight to silk because I can really easily picture what silk feels like in my hand. So you're supposed to picture that, and then you're just, without lifting your arms and actually grabbing for this imaginary rope, you're supposed to imagine your arms lifting out of your body, grabbing onto this rope, and then pulling your body, your astral body, out of your physical body. So we're laying down in the living room. She's on one couch, I'm on the other couch. And I'm picturing, pulling myself out of my body with this silk rope that's hanging from the ether, right? And I feel it. It really feels like it starts working. I don't know if I'm tricking myself or what, but I feel like that lightness in your arms and your legs almost when you're falling asleep, that feeling where you're there but you're not. And I'm trying to stay calm, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm actually going to be able to do this. This would be so cool. And then I hear a crash in the kitchen behind us, and we both sit up. And my friend Amanda looks at me and she goes, I felt like I was about to do it. And I was like, me too. I felt like I was so close. But we get up And we go into the kitchen and there's nothing wrong. Nothing fell. There's nothing on the ground. And we can just hear like a clicking, like on and off. And we're looking at like, what is making a clicking noise? And we look over and the coffee machine on and off button is flicking on and off like crazy, like right in front of us, like physically moving. And so, of course, I unplug it and I'm like, let's just pretend that didn't happen and no more astral projecting. Okay, we're done. Sorry, we get it. We get the signal. We're not going to try anymore. So we go back into the living room. We kind of try to move on with our day. We're watching TV and then we end up, I play guitar and she sings. So I muted the TV and I was playing guitar and she was singing. And while we're doing this, I keep swearing that I'm hearing a baby crying upstairs in my dad's like master bedroom. And I'm thinking I'm crazy. And finally Amanda stops and she goes, "Do you hear a baby crying upstairs?" And I was like, "Yes, what is that?" And she's like, "I have no idea, but I've never been more scared in my life and I'm not going upstairs. Like, I feel like something's trying to make us go upstairs and I don't want to do it." And I was like, "Okay, that's fair. So we spend the rest of the day, like, we don't even go upstairs to change. We stay in our pajamas all day. And then finally, one of my brothers, who also lives in Arizona, calls us and is like, "Hey, I'm going to have some people over tonight. Do you guys want to come over?" And we're like, "Yes, we would love to get out of this house right now." But we hadn't showered. We hadn't even changed our clothes. So we came up with this plan where we would just go into the bathroom, and while one of us was in the shower, the other one would just kind of wait in the bathroom, and then we'd switch. So that's what we did. And it was fine. And come here a second. Sorry, my dog likes to sit under me while I record. We were fine.
Oh, maybe that was your dog then that moved the curtain.
She was under my feet when it happened. Sorry, I know. So one of us gets out of the shower, the other switches and is doing their makeup. And Amanda's like, "Oh, I need to get my clothes out of the room that's like catty corner. So I'm just going to leave the door open, run over there, open the door, grab my clothes, and then bolt." So she tries to go over there and the door won't open. And she's like pushing on this door as hard as she can. It's not locked. The handle will turn, but it won't push open. And so I get out of the shower and all my clothes are in there too. And I go to try to open the door and it won't open. I'm like laying my shoulder into this thing. It will not open. So we get down on our hands and knees and look under the door and there's nothing in there, nothing blocking the door, but there's just cold air like pouring out of this room. And I go and check to see if the air conditioner's on. It's not, of course. And so I'm like, okay, we're just going to wear our pajamas. It's going to be fine. Let's go get ready and get out of here. So we go back into the bathroom. We're getting dressed really quick. And as I'm standing in front of the mirror, braiding my hair, because it's soaking wet, but we're not going to stay and like do our hair. I'm braiding my hair and I'm like, "Ow, what the heck?" And I look down and Amanda's like, "What? Did like a bug bite you?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just like got this crazy feeling on my arm." We're looking at my arm and right in front of our eyes, this huge red handprint shows up around my arm, like a burn, like it had welts on it. And we were like, "All right, we're out of here." And we just like bolted down the stairs, ran out, locked the door, and went to my brother's house. When we get there, we're telling them the story. He thinks it's hilarious. All of his friends think it's hilarious. They're all looking at my burn on my arm. They're thinking we somehow faked it. And I'm like, "We both watched it show up." And so I'm like, "We're sleeping here tonight, by the way." And he's like, "Yeah, okay." So we sleep on like a couch and like a little pullout. And the next morning we wake up and there's this huge handprint on the outside of the window right behind where we both slept. I've never been more scared of anything in my life. And I was like, I promise, whoever's up there, I will never try astral projecting again. I swear. I learned my lesson. It was horrifying.
Many people fear astral projection. There are plenty of myths surrounding the practice, like you could be stuck in another realm, or something will enter your body while you're not there. But according to the International Academy of Consciousness, these fears are unfounded and exist to prevent people from developing this very natural ability. Successful astral projection can help ease anxieties around death, make you more compassionate, heighten your intuition, even help you find your own answers to life's biggest questions. Those are some pretty powerful possibilities. And I think what might have happened was that whatever's been following Cassidy throughout her life doesn't want her to ascend. So it snapped her out of her trance and scared her badly enough that she never wanted to try it again. Maybe this oppressive force wants to prohibit Cassidy from ever gaining the powers that her ancestors punished others for using.
On my dad's side, my 9th grandmother is actually Ann Putnam Sr., whose family members were the principal accusers in the Salem witch trials. And there were lots of tragedies that happened to that family after the trials. A lot of them died of disease. So the rumor was that we were kind of cursed. And so I guess every day I just have to live my life trying to make up for my ancestral mistakes. I think if anything, because as we know, a lot of the women who were accused for political reasons or were accused just because they were just women. And I think that would be great karma to be like, oh, you're so afraid of this thing. You're so afraid of this power that you think a woman could have over you, right? That's what terrified them. The idea of witchcraft was this idea that a woman could have power and maybe be able to do things without a man and better than a man. So maybe that would be the ultimate karma, is to have to experience these things and see, like, it's not like this great communing with the devil or whatever you thought it was. You have to experience every part of it, like whether it's scaring you or it's there to help you or it's scared of you. That is kind of a burden in a way. I wouldn't trade it for the world personally. Keeps things interesting, and it definitely leaves me with an open mind.
Check out Cassidy's podcast, Drinking the Kool-Aid, where she and her friend Amanda discuss everything from ghosts to aliens to true crime and more. Links are in the show notes. Thank you for joining me today. If you like what you heard and would like to support this independently run show, consider becoming a member of my Patreon. Visit patreon.com/storieswithsapphire to see the different tiers and perks. If you'd like to submit a story, email me at storieswithsapphire@gmail.com. Salamat and good night.